One of the most basic concepts that you have to get used to in Illustrator is working with a fill and a stroke. Before we see what a fill and a stroke is, make sure that you have the color panel open and the swatches panel. If you don't know how to do that, then go up to the window menu and choose the color panel and the swatches panel. Now for each of these, just be aware that there's this little button to the left hand side that can collapse it between kind of halfway view, totally collapsed, and then fully expanded. So make sure that you're on the fully expanded version. For swatches, it's just double click to open them up or close them. Now when it comes to the swatches, these are just basic colors, and I have a lot more than you have. All of these right here are new because these are the ones that I've used in my project. But these are just your basic primary kind of crayon set of colors. And you might not see this group either because it was just me playing around with this document. So these are kind of little tiny previews of these swatches, and I like to see them a little bit bigger. So just remember, for every panel, you should see a panel menu, and you have a bunch of options in here. So you can sort them a certain way. You can do a large thumbnail view, which is what I'm going to do. And this makes it a lot easier for me to work with this. All right, so let's go ahead and talk about stroke and fill. A stroke is basically the outside line of an object, and the fill is the actual inside color of an object. So let's see how that works. I'm going to go ahead and make sure I'm on the default fill of white and the default stroke color of black. So anytime you see this solid square, that's indicating the fill color of an object, and then this outer line is indicating the stroke. And whichever one is the foreground, or the most prominent one, or the selected one, that's the one that, if you're using swatches, it'll apply to. So let's go ahead and leave it normal as is. And if you're looking up in the options bar, you can see there's also a fill color and a stroke. It doesn't matter which one of those you use. And then in the color panel, we see fill color and stroke. So let's go ahead and draw a basic shape. I'm going to grab the ellipse tool, and it looks like my layer's locked. So I'm going to make sure I'm on the right layer. All right, so when I draw out this circle, I can draw a perfect circle, and there's my basic shape. I have a black stroke on the outside and a white color fill. So anytime I go to drag, I can click anywhere in here, whether it's on the stroke or the fill, and it's going to drag both of those items with it. Now, that's the basic generic style. If I want to change my stroke into fill color, I definitely can. First though, you need to make sure that you don't have an object selected, because the minute you go up here to change the color, it'll change whatever color of the object is selected. So let me undo that. I'll click off, and now I'll change my color. So let's say I want to do a hot pink, and let's say I want to do a green stroke, and then I'm going to draw another circle. So I'm holding shift, kind of moving it around, trying to make it perfect, and there we go. Now with that object selected, I can click to select it, and I can increase the stroke size. So now you can kind of see that outside green stroke, and let's make a higher contrast. Let's do yellow. So now we can see that stroke and the fill color. Now for each of these, you can change what stroke and fill color by coming up here, or you can double click inside of here so that you're not stuck with whatever basic swatches were there. So if I want a little bit of a lighter shade of pink, I definitely can. That's not something that was available to me in these basic swatches. And for each of these, if I didn't want to have a stroke, I can click this drop down menu and choose this none. It's the white square with the red box through it, or red line through it, I mean. And same with the stroke. Let's say I had orange and I didn't want a stroke, I could come here and do the none. And it's still also here as well, but these are kind of little, so I'm using this one over here. Okay, so once you get the idea of a stroke and a fill down, then you can start messing with what kind of fills you have and what kind of strokes you have. So let's go ahead and play around with the stroke. I'll drag another shape, and as you can see, the last object that you had selected, it kept the properties of that last object. So with this stroke selected, I can come over here and I can change the uniformity of that stroke. So right now it's uniform, it's perfectly the same all the way around. Or I can do some variable widths. So now that's creating a pretty cool circle that has some thin lines and some thick lines. And I can come around and play with other ones of these. In addition, we can go here to a different brush definition. Now yours probably looks different than mine because again, I've been playing around in my Illustrator. And that's what you should do. I can't reiterate that enough. Every time you're in Illustrator, just open a new document and start clicking on things and see what happens. So I can change a flat, I can change to one of these, and some of them don't look really good, but I can change to a basic charcoal brush setting, and I can mess with all of these. So you're probably wondering where yours are because you're not seeing as many as I'm seeing. Well, when it comes to strokes and colors and all kinds of other things, there's just too many for Illustrator to show you. So instead, it's hidden most things in libraries. So if I click on the brush library, you can see that there are a bunch of libraries that I can go through. So let's click on Arrow Special, and we'll bring that one up. And now all of a sudden we have all these arrow options that I can play with. So I can choose one of these, and now I have a pretty cool arrow going around my circle. So some of them are going to look better than others. I kind of like this one. It's kind of cartoony. But at the same time, there are a lot of other libraries you can play with. So let's scroll through it by using this Load Next Brush library, and you can go back this way. So these are pretty basic arrows. And then we have some kind of stylized arrows. And I'm not seeing the points of these arrows, but it just takes a matter of playing. So we can do some of these scribble type effects. And there's a ton of other stuff in here. So I suggest that you come through and you can play it because I think this is a really cool stroke idea right here. So we'll do the race car pattern. All right, same thing with colors. If I wanted to do a certain inside color for this, I definitely could come up here and I can do a color from any of these options. But I can also fill this with a gradient color. I can fill it with a pattern. I can choose what colors are in here. And right now, again, I'm only seeing a very, very small few of these actual swatches. So I can click on this library, and here are a ton of different color properties. So let's say I wanted to do metal. Well, then it's going to bring up all these different colors that relate to metal. So I can change any of these colors in here. And they have some pretty cool ones like art history. Let's say Middle Ages. It's all the colors that are associated with Middle Age art. So none of them are going to look good with this racetrack one. But I can even do gradients. So I want to do metals for gradients. And let's do kind of a circular metal looking radial gradient. So you can kind of mess with each of these and see what it's going to give you in terms of style and definition. But don't forget those libraries because there's a ton of other stuff. And as you can see, each time I add a new gradient from one of those swatches, it shows up in my regular used swatches panel. So let's do one more and go to patterns. So I can go to decorative and monster patterns. So these are already pre-made patterns that you can definitely put inside of your object if you wanted to. So again, every time I click on one, you can see that it's adding it here. So that doesn't look very cool. It's cool that you can do it, but obviously that doesn't make sense together. But don't forget that when it comes to fill and stroke, it's not just basic stroke, a perfect line with perfect solid colors. You can do a lot of other stuff with the fill and the stroke. Last but not least, we're gonna cover this later in other tutorial videos in depth. But if you want to create your own gradients, if I want to do a radial gradient, I can come here and I can choose, let's say, a blue color and have it go to a red color. That looks hideous. And I'm going to take that gray out. So I can definitely do that. I can make my own gradients. And with the strokes, I can actually change what kind of stroke it is. So right now, this is just a regular uniform stroke. And I can come in here and I can say it should be a dashed line. And I can say there should be a dash 12 and then maybe 4 and then 12 and then maybe 4 and then 12 and then maybe 4. And so you're getting kind of this weird dashed line look. So you can mess with the different corners and caps, and you can do a lot of different stuff with those strokes and fill. So again, make sure when you're in Illustrator that you are definitely practicing and playing on stuff that doesn't matter to you, that you don't care about if you mess up, because that's the best way to learn without that pressure. Last, When you're working with a stroke, if you know that object is always going to be in this document, this project, and you're not going to use it anywhere else, then use a stroke because it's really easy to use. But if you're designing something that you think is going to be used on a lot of different projects, let's say a logo, be careful because a stroke is going to resize differently than you want it to. So if you design a logo that's this big, the whole size of our artboard right now, and then we make it really small for a business card, it's going to look weird. The stroke's going to not resize properly. And then if we make it huge to maybe paint it on the side of a building, it's also not going to resize properly. So that's when you need to do something called an offset path, which we have a tutorial video about. So go ahead and go check that out on YouTube.